The all-new Hyundai Palisade is the largest Hyundai that they've ever sent to the United States. And this is also the most family-friendly Hyundai in the US at the moment. This has an 8-passenger capacity, 7 is optional depending on the trim level you get, and we have a ton of latch anchors and other child seat-friendly features on the inside. So in this video, we're going to dive right into the family friendliness, and we're going to leave the full review to a separate video. One of the main advantages for the Palisade over its direct competitors in the 3-row crossover segment is the amount of legroom that we find on the inside. As you can see on the chart over there on the side of your screen, we have class-leading legroom, and that is front row plus second row plus third row combined. A lot of folks don't realize this, but legroom is very important, especially if we're talking about rear-facing child seats. For instance, I've now moved this front seat up, suitable for me at 6 feet tall up front with about 2 inches of clearance between my knees and the dashboard. That's a decent amount of clearance right there for an adult. And then I can now safely put this convertible child seat right behind it. According to the level on the seat, this is in the right position. And if it was strapped in, it would move a little bit further rearward, giving you enough clearance between the front seat and the child seat to be safe. It's important to remember when installing a child seat in a modern vehicle that a lot of vehicles have anti-whiplash seats up front, and they do move a little bit rearward in the event of a rear end collision. So you want to leave about 2 inches of space between the child seat and the seat up front. Thanks to the width of the Palisade, we also have enough room here if I were to try and move this center seat into a rear-facing position. You'll notice that there's definitely enough clearance, and because of the width of the vehicle, there's definitely enough clearance between the sides, even if the front seats had to be moved back a little bit. When it comes to anchors, the Palisade has 3 sets of latch anchors, but they're not all here in the second row for some reason. So this center seat position does not have a set of latch anchors. It's reserved just for the 2 outer positions. And that's true whether we get the 7-passenger or the 8-passenger version of the Palisade. All 3 seating positions in the middle row provide top tether anchors, which is important. And a nice touch is that this center seat position, the seatbelt comes out of the seat back itself, not out of the ceiling here for the second row. That means that if we were to put a child seat right here in the center and then secure it with this shoulder belt, it's going to be sitting right here in the middle of the bench rather than being skewed to one side or the other. Again, thanks to the width of the Palisade, I had no problem fitting 3 child seats across this second row or putting an adult comfortably right next to a child seat in the middle. Unfortunately, even though the Palisade has an awful lot of combined legroom, they didn't design these second row seats to tilt and fold when there's a child seat latched into place. I can press this button until the cows come home and the seat is never going to move because of the way the child seat is configured here and the way the seat moves. Now, that means that in order to get into the third row with a seat latched into place, you have to slide the second row seat all the way forward and then try and squeeze here through this opening. That's going to be a little bit easier for kids than adults, but it is possible. Unfortunately, in the US at this time, there are very few 3-row crossovers that let you keep a child seat in place and still tilt and slide forward. And those would include entries like the Mazda CX-9, the Volkswagen Atlas, which will do it on both the 60 and 40% side of the seats, and the Nissan Pathfinder. Aside from that, the only other main 3-row vehicle that will do this is something like the Chrysler Pacifica minivan. Something that a lot of folks don't consider, however, is that although you can get into the third row this way, the third row person can't get themselves out of the vehicle. So you do need someone to come around, grab that bar, scoot the second row forward, and then you can escape. This would apply if you had a booster seat or a child seat in place due to the overall design of the second row seats. Although some booster seats may be low enough that you may still be able to tilt and slide this seat forward, but child seats in this fashion, it just won't happen. As I said before, there are 3 sets of latch anchors in here. We have 2 in the outboard seating positions in the second row, and then 1 right back here in the third row. The outboard seating position on the driver's side and the center in the third row both have top tether anchors, but you really just have to choose where you want to put the child seat. And it's important to keep in mind that like many 3-row crossovers, this 3-person bench in the very, very back is awfully narrow compared to a modern minivan. So you're definitely not going to be able to put 2 people and a child seat back here in the third row. Even if they were particularly skinny, a child seat like this occupies about half of the center seat position, and the latch anchor is actually on my side of the buckle for this center seat position, which does come out of the ceiling. That's another thing to keep in mind. If you do plan on putting a child seat right there in the middle of the third row, it could be skewed slightly to one side or the other, and that would mean that you could really just only have the child seat back here in the third row. If you were to put this right there in the middle, there really wouldn't be enough room for me on the other side. Thanks to a large amount of interior room and a pretty generously sized cargo area, the Palisade does very well in our family friendliness tests. However, you should know that if you have children in child seats, especially 2 or 3 children in a combination of child seats, booster seats, etc., then you should know that something like the Volkswagen Atlas could be a little bit more friendly for your situation. Now, it's not going to have an 8-passenger capacity like we find in this model. That is an oddity in the Volkswagen lineup, but the second row seats, all 3 of them, will flip and fold forward with a child seat latched into place, or a booster seat depending on your particular situation. And that is a very, very handy feature. If you're planning on putting anyone in the way back, well, you have those child seats latched into the second row. Now, on the downside, the Volkswagen is not going to be quite as reliable as the Palisade in expected reliability testing. The Palisade is also a better value than most Volkswagen Atlas trims. And again, we have that 8-passenger configuration available. So if you do want the 8-passenger seating, that's not going to be something you'll find in the Volkswagen lineup. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comment section below. And of course, stay tuned for our full review on the Palisade coming up just as soon as possible. I'll see you next week.